Great news for those of you who use Robinhood and have that grantor living revocable trust. My name is Paul Vazquez with Tax Lab, and you need to become an ethical millionaire. So, great news. I was taking a look and calculating out my annualized rate of return on my investments. So one thing I've noticed with Robinhood is that when they give you the rate of return, they do not include the dividends and interest that you receive as part of the rate of return. They're just calculating when they show you that rate of return on the graph of all your assets. What they're actually showing you is just the raise the portfolio value, and that they do not count your deposits, which they shouldn't, as a return. However, they're not giving you a way to easily say, okay, but I also had dividends and interest coming through that I ended up reinvesting or doing whatever with, right? That was an increase of your assets in that year, so it's a rate of return. Even though it's not related to growth, it's related to the returns from dividends and interest. So they don't include that. So I was in there recording that, and I noticed that they had now added the ability to add a beneficiary on, which is fantastic, right? Because a lot of these other brokerages, and Robinhood was kind of like one of the first that really democratized access to the stock market for so many of us. And so it was fantastic to just be a regular retail investor and be able to start putting money away. And I didn't have to beg, borrow, and steal the time of some investment advisor who will only see you if you've got over $500,000 in assets starting off, right? And most of us, when we're starting off, we're not starting off with $500,000 in liquid assets to invest. So Robinhood was a great place to start, and it's really easy to navigate. I still find some features on Robinhood easier to navigate than some other brokerage accounts. But I go on there, and now you can put in your beneficiaries. Of course, I have a grantor, revocable living trust, and you should too. This helps avoid probate taxes. And you might say, oh, well, I'm not going to have enough for estate tax. That's upwards of $6 million now. Maybe at this moment you don't have upwards of $6 million. Hopefully, by the time you get to retirement, you will. But additionally, there is a thing called probate tax, and most counties who are going to help navigate that passing of assets on to the next generation are going to have a probate tax, which is usually based on the value of the assets to pass through probate. So if it's in the will, if it did not enter a trust, it goes through probate. So if you have a large portfolio or a home, and that is not inside of your revocable living trust, when you pass, it runs through probate. And if your heirs do not have a way to pay for that probate tax without selling the assets off, could be that home, then they're out of that home just to pay the probate taxes if they've got nowhere else to turn. So smart move. There's a lot of other interesting protections that can go on with that. But what you will need if you have a grantor revocable living trust is the name of the trust. Hopefully it's not your name or your family name. You want some anonymity built into that if your state allows it. And you're going to need your formation date. That should be on the paperwork. The paperwork's going to be pretty much saying, as of this day, in this year, this trust was started, right? So they're going to see that at the beginning of your trust documents. And then for the majority of you, which is the smartest way to go while you're living, is using your social security number as the tax ID number for that grantor revocable living trust. You don't need to go out and get a separate trust ID for that. It just kind of creates a little extra hassle for you to do that. Once you pass on, of course, I hope you never do. I hope we find the key for immortality and you're able to live as long as you like. But supposing that doesn't happen and you do pass on, at that point, whomever your trustee, that person is going to be responsible for going out there and getting that EIN and attaching it to the trust. So that way it'll then become an irrevocable trust. So be careful when also creating that trust name that you don't put in there revocable trust, because you could end up having a trust that has revocable in the name, but then turns into an irrevocable trust. I like to use living in there because it says that this is a grantor type trust without saying grantor type trust in the title. So I would not elect to have it called a grantor trust in the title. I might call it a living trust. The living trust, you're not going to know if it has become irrevocable, right? That's all going to depend on whether the grantor has passed away or not. So a lot of interesting things here, but if you are a Robinhood user and you haven't put on those beneficiaries, you should, because we don't know what kind of rules Robinhood or your state might come up with when it comes to that. If nobody is available to become your heir under a will and you don't have that trust set up, sometimes the state just gets it. Yeah, you're just giving it right to them. And maybe you love your state that much. I hope you do. But if you love somebody more, do the smart thing. Get that going, because you never know what tomorrow brings. Hopefully, all of us have long, lovable, successful, not a word, life. But tragedies do happen. Hope it doesn't happen to you. But, right, we want to live like we're in the maximum amount of joy, but plan as though tragedy could hit any time. That being said, go out there, make sure you've put on those beneficiaries, and I wish you all the success.